Oh, testing, testing. Oh, 有聲啊. Okay, so boys, welcome back to our chapter 23 video, in which this time we are going to look at international trade as a topic, right? Now, first of all, I'm very sorry because I know the video has been delayed for more than 2 weeks because the video codec in my computer wasn't quite working well. I don't know why. I just couldn't take a video properly. Okay, so here. Let's not delay and get right into the chapter. Now, for this chapter, most likely we are going to break it down into 4 different videos. In this first video, we are going to look at section 1, 2, and 3, which are the theory behind all the things we are going to talk about, the theory parts, okay? And then for the second and third video, we are going to look at a lot of examination questions, okay? Now, in this chapter, usually there are 2 kinds of examination questions that we need to deal with. That would be type 1 and type 2. We are going to spend 2 videos talking about them separately, okay? Because for this chapter, basically, there are only 2 types of questions. Not much creativity, so to speak. And for the final video, we are going to look at some advanced level questions, those questions that with some complications, or they are not type 1 and type 2 at all. Sometimes they get very crazy. Okay? 好嘛？嗱，咁唔好嘥時間啦。Now, let's get right into section 1, 2, and 3. Now, for section 1, we are going to very briefly talk about the rationale for international trade. Now, trust me, these topics, you do not need to spend too much time to revise them. As long as you understand what is going on, then it should be okay. Do not spend too much time on here. Okay, now we naturally ask the question, why countries engage in trades? Okay, why countries engage in trades? Now let's see what's going on here. Let's see here. The first reason, which we are going to spend quite a lot of time to talk about, is to enjoy higher output level. Okay, that is according to the principle of comparative advantage. Okay, so let's skip this one and talk about others that we are not going to talk about later. Now, the first and second reason, the second and third reason. Okay, here, think about it. Some countries, they just do not have the resources at all. For example, let's say Africa, they do not have water. 咁咪渴死咯，係咪啊？ People will die of dehydration, right? So, in order to get water, but they cannot produce the water by themselves, what do? They buy water from other countries, right? That's why they buy products to be to make life sufficient, right? 係咪？唔能夠自給自足啊，所以要買人哋嘢咯。Okay? Now, second reason, very similar. Here, maybe this time we are not talking about necessity like water. We are talking about products that feels good, right? Luxurious goods. Okay? Now, for example, in here, the Siberia, 係咪西伯利亞？係嘛？我唔知大家有冇聽過首歌啦。我是一個西伯利亞人，冬天的冠軍啊嘛。You know, in Siberia, it is so cold that it is basically impossible to do any planting, right? To do any planting of the agricultural products, right? So if you want to drink coffee in Siberia, right? You cannot grow them by yourself. 你知種唔到啊，凍到嘔啊，結冰啊會。Okay, you need to import coffee beans from other countries. Okay, or else you cannot enjoy. So you engage in trade for a wider variety of products. Okay, 好嗎？ Now, for the other reasons, sometimes you engage in trade not just for the good, but you want also the technology behind the production of the goods. One typical example would be buying weapons. 買軍火咯，買軍火攞嚟做咩啊？ You buy the weapons not just to use the weapons for national defense, but you also buy them so that you can reverse engineer them. 係咪啊？你可以睇下人哋攞咩技術拆開睇下人哋點整啊嘛，係咪啊 ？So to improve our technology，OK， 好嘛？ Now one funny reason, the next one would be so-called to introduce competition in local market. Okay, now remember, some products, locally speaking, maybe it is so difficult to produce that only one player in the market can produce that, especially in the case of natural monopoly. Okay, 係咪通常咧 natural monopoly 啦，好嘛？嗱，let me give you some example. Now, one example would be electricity supply. Electricity supply. Now, let's say if you want to supply electricity, you need to invest a lot of money because you need the power station, you need the power cable, etc. Right? You need to use a lot of money in order to start up a business. So in Hong Kong, we do not have a lot of such big companies that can afford such prices. Now, therefore, naturally, only two of them, right? In fact, only one of them in each region could do that, right? Could do it because they have the money, right? So that would become a case of monopoly. Now, if you want to have more competition, one possible way would be to try to invite those huge companies from overseas to invest in Hong Kong and to get into the market, right? 引入競爭啊 in Chinese, right? So that with competition, hopefully prices will go down and the quality of goods will go up. Okay, 好唔好啊？好啦，嗱 finally, sometimes doing trade is not for the reasons of earning money, but to establish relationship, diplomatic reasons, right? 係嘛？即係嚟你問數啫嘛。Let's say for example, you go to ask for you go to ask help for mathematics with a girl. 係嘛？你同個女仔，你問佢數，你有時唔係諗住問佢數噶嘛。You just want this as a platform for you to establish some kind of, let's say, friendship or relationship, right? 係咪？乘機去溝女嘅啫嘛，係嘛？ For the same reason, sometimes you do trade to build relationship, diplomatic relationship. Okay, 好嘛？ So these are the other factors, possible factors for countries to engage in trade. Okay, 好嘛？嗱，我唔嘥時間啦。Now, let's go into the important part. Now, before we can decide who will import and who will export, we need to first understand two terms here. The first term, what we call absolute advantage. Okay, now let's look at the definition first. Now, the definition of absolute advantage here is that when a country has absolute advantage, it means that they can produce more goods with the same amount of resources. 用同樣嘅資源可以做多啲 goods 出嚟。So in short, we are talking about higher productivity， 做得快啲，係咪啊？或者做得多啲，係咪？我哋講緊做得多啲，用同樣嘅資源做多啲啦 ，more productive, right? Now I know this is a little bit, let's say, abstract, right? So here, let's put it into some perspective. Okay, let's put it into some perspective. Okay, now assume both country A and country B has 1 unit of resource, 係嘛？我哋有一個 unit 嘅資源啦。Okay, now by spending 1 unit of resource, they can either make 20 food for country A, something like that, right? Now, for this kind of table, now starting from today on, I want you to start drawing a universal table. With this kind of universal table, you can do basically all kinds of questions. 唔好意思啊，話錯咗啊，等我陣啊。Start practicing drawing the following table. Okay, the following table goes like this. Okay, 睇住啦噃。This is country A. This is country B. And then we copy food, shoes. But then there is one extra column that we need to add. we call it the resources column. Okay, and this would be the most important column in all of our questions, right? Now, for now, we know country A with 1 resources can do 20 food. With 1 resources, do 40 shoes, right? 好啦 Now, for country B, 1 resource can do 5 food. 1 resources can do 8 shoes. Now, immediately, look at here. With the same resources, do you see country A is producing more food here? 見唔見到啊？原來佢睇下先啊 Yes, here country A with the same resources, they are producing more food. In other words, we call it more productive, or we say country A has absolute advantage in producing food. What about shoes? The same. Here, 1 resource, I can do 8 versus 1 resource, I do 40 shoes. Okay, so also absolute advantage in producing shoes. 見唔見啊？做鞋同做食物都快過人。Okay, 得唔得？ So country A has absolute advantage in both of these goods. 好嘛？ All right. Now, so this is the idea of absolute advantage. Now, let's go back to another word. We call it the comparative advantage. 係啦，一個相對優勢啦。So, what is this? Let's see. Comparative advantage means that we can produce a product with a lower per unit opportunity cost. And this opportunity cost, it's measured in terms of another product. The product that you have given up. Okay? So, what does that mean? It means here. Now, once we have dealt with absolute advantage, now let's look at comparative advantage. 我哋而家睇下 comparative advantage 好啦 now what's going on here? Let's see. For country A, you will see that from the table. 1 resources can make 20 food. 哎呀 Okay, 好嗎 20 food. But with the same resources, you can do instead 40 shoes. So what does that mean? It means that the opportunity cost of producing 1 food. 好啦 20個 food 就等於40個 shoe 啊嘛。咁即係整一個 food 係放棄幾多啊？ It should equal to 2 actually. 40 divided by 20 here equals to 2 shoes. 每做一件 food, 你係放棄緊2對鞋。Okay, 2 shoes. Opportunity cost of producing 1 shoe. 好啦，一隻鞋咧 Okay, for making 1 shoe, you are giving up this 0.5 food. Okay, 好嘛？倒轉啫，得唔得？ So, this is how we look at the opportunity cost. Now, same for country B. You see for country B, right now, we are talking about 5 food and 8 shoe. 5F equals to 8 shoe. Meaning, the opportunity cost of producing 1 food, 好啦，做一個 food 要幾多啊？ That would be 8 divided by 5, which would be 1.6 S shoes. Now, the reciprocal would be opportunity cost of producing 1 shoe. 好啦，咁整一隻鞋要幾多啊？ Would be 5 divided by 8, and that would be 0.625 food. Okay, these would be the opportunity cost of producing certain product in terms of other product. Okay, 好啦，嗱咁我哋可以睇comparative advantage 啊。Remember comparative advantage is saying that with a lower per unit opportunity cost. So let's see here for food 2 versus 1.6 shoes. We know that country B here, country B would have an comparative advantage in producing food because the cost of producing one food would be lower than that of country A. 好嗎? Now, what about food? What about shoe? Okay, you see here 0.5 food versus 0.625. Here, for country A, they would have a comparative advantage in producing shoe. 好嗎？做鞋佢有優勢啦。Okay, so this is how we look at comparative advantage and absolute advantage. Okay, 好嗎? Now this is very important, right? Now with this example, remember there are 2 main points that you need to remember. Okay, 好嗎? First main point, a country can have absolute advantage in producing both goods. 你見唔見啊？ Country A 兩個都係 absolute advantage 喎。Okay, it is possible for a country to have absolute advantage in producing all goods. But remember, for our second point, our country cannot have comparative advantage in producing both goods. In fact, if you have advantage in producing one good, the other goods must be absolute disadvantage. 你有一個 comparative advantage， 必定代表另一個會係 absolute 會係 comparative disadvantage. Okay, this is a mathematical question because you see, right? A over B, B over A 呢個 reciprocal 嘅關係啊，好嗎？分子分母嘅問題啊。Okay, so these 2 main points, they always appear in examination. You must know them. Okay, 好嗎? So this is the basic theory. Okay, basic theory of absolute advantage and comparative advantage. Okay, now I know absolute seems very powerful. 見到 absolute 呢個字係咪好勁啊？ But remember, in this chapter, the important one is actually comparative advantage, not absolute advantage. In fact, absolute advantage is not helpful at all in most cases. 好唔好啊？原來 comparative advantage 係比較重要㗎。So let's look at one theory. We call it the principle of comparative advantage. Oh, sorry, my computer acting funny again. Okay, so here, let's back to principle of comparative advantage. You see, the principle of comparative advantage, what is that? Now, first of all, remember, you need to recite this principle because it would appear in examination. 係會出現㗎嚇，好嗎？ Now, it says, the principle of comparative advantage, if countries specialize, 你見到佢字啊？ specialize in producing the products that they have comparative advantages in, then the total output of all countries will increase. 當呢國家集中做自己做得平嗰隻 okay, with lower opportunity cost, then the total output of all countries will increase. That is the principle. Now, let me give you one example, okay? A little bit back. 好啦，嗱，我哋要飛少少啊，好嗎？ Now, let us go to page here, page 24. Let's look at the question of 2020，我哋睇2020年嘅題目，好嘛 ？Now it says, here shows it before international trade. This is a table. Now both countries use 1 unit of resource on X and 1 unit of resource on Y. 好嘛 ？Now here, for our easy reference, remember I just mentioned we always use our universal table 係咪？我哋話翻我哋學咗嘅 universal table 啦，好嘛 ？Here country A, country B, then we have good X, good Y, and we have our resources. OK 好嘛？我哋 resources 啊。Now it says one resources can do 100 X or 25 Y. 180, 140. Okay, 好嘛 ？So this is before the trade. Let's say, no. Let's not talk. Let's deal with the so-called comparative advantage first. Here, you will see for country A, we can see that 100x will be the same as 25y. Now, therefore, 1x would be 0.25y or 1y would be 4x here. 係嘛？你做一個 y 係放棄4個 x， 或者做一隻 x 放棄0.25隻 y 啦。Okay? Now for country B, you will see that 80x will be equal to 40y, meaning 1x would be 0.5y or 1y would be 2x. 係嘛？ So let's see. For country A, do you see that the opportunity cost of producing 1x would be lower than that of country B? Therefore, country A has a comparative advantage in producing X, while country B, the opposite, comparative advantage in producing Y. 好嘛？好啦，我哋有咗呢個啦。Now, let's calculate. If they do not trade and they split it 1-1 for X and Y, okay? So before trade, how many units would they make? Country A would make 100X and 25Y. Now country B would make 80X plus 40Y. This is the original situation. Now, after, remember, according to the principle of comparative advantage, country should specialize in making the goods that they have comparative advantage in, right? 所以啦 ，A 會集中做咩啊 ？Country A 係咪會集中做 X 啊 ？So here, complete specialization 係咪佢講明嘅 completely specialized? So what happens? Country A will use these resources to do another 100x. It would be 200x. Of course, because complete specialization, they will not produce y. 誒，我打錯咗添，對唔住啊。Country A here 200x plus 0y. What about country B? Country B, they will focus on making y because by making good Y, they have a comparative advantage in, right? So they would not make X according to the question, okay? And use this one resource to make yet another 40 unit of Y. So the total here, you will see, will be 200X plus 40Y. Before that, the total would be 180X and here, let's see, 65Y. Is it? 係咪我有冇睇錯啊？ Oh, no, sorry, this is 80. Sorry, this is 80. Now compare the total number. Do you see that? Originally, 180. Now, with specialization, you make 20 more eggs, right? You make 20 more eggs. And with specialization in the goods that you have comparative advantage in, you make 15 more Y. 見唔見啊？65變成80啦。So this is according to the principle of comparative advantage 啦。頭先我哋話啦，原來 when they specialize in making the goods, they have comparative advantage in the total output increase. So you see, right? Total output increased. 得唔得？ So this is an illustration of the principle of comparative advantage. 得唔得？ Now, make sure you know what's going on here. Otherwise, watch the video again until you know what I've just talked about. 好嘛？呢個就係 principle of comparative advantage 啦。Now, here, let's go back. Now, there are some points I need you to understand. First, when you specialize, just like in the previous case, when you specialize, you are making less or even making zero of another good, meaning you will lose self-sufficiency. 你係咪自己冇做晒所有嘢啊？ Therefore, some goods you need to rely on import. That would deem trade necessary. 係咪啊？所以先至需要做交易咯。Okay. Now remember, second thing, we talk about the total output increase, but individually, each country, they may not have increased. For example, in here, you see, country A, Y has decreased individually. Some goods may have decreased. OK， 得唔得？你有啲 goods 真係會跌咗㗎，所以未必得㗎。好嘛？ Now, here finally, there is one thing I've forgotten to type in here. So please add it back. Number 3, by specialization. Okay? We say when they specialize, it is not necessarily a complete specialization. 唔一定係完全 specialize 淨咗一樣嘢㗎。In fact, sometimes if you do complete specialization, you would make a certain product, the output would actually decrease. Okay? Now let me give you one example. 原來有時咧，你完全 specialize 啊，一個 complete specialization 反而會令有啲嘢跌咗㗎。Okay? 好嘛？嗱 let's use this example. Here, the example. Here, previously, we remember, I'll copy 落嚟啊。We remember from previous example, we know that country A should produce shoes and country B should produce food only, right? So let's see. 好啦，now let me make it into a more readable form, okay? 1F would be 2S or 1S with 0.5 F. Okay? 好啦，咁呢兩個鏟咗佢啦。Here, you see comparative advantage in making shoes. And here, 1F equals to 1.6 shoes. 1 shoe equals to 0.625 food. Okay? So you see, when we talk about comparative advantage, country B has comparative advantage in making food. Okay, so let's see what happened. Before they engage in trade, right? Before they engage in trade, let's assume, now let's assume country A and country B has 2 resources evenly split. 好啦, with one resource, they can do 20 food and another resource do 40 shoes, right? So before they engage in trade and before specialization, what happens? Country A would make 20 food plus 40 shoes. Country B would make 5 food plus 8 shoes. So in total, we will have 25 food plus 48 shoes. Now, we just mentioned, right? They would specialize according to their comparative advantage. Now, let's say they have complete specialization. 好嘛？而家啦，佢哋係完全嘅 specialization. So what happens will be that here 唔夠位添。我鏟咗呢個去啦，好嘛 ？No. Can I? Yes. Let's. Now after specialization, what happened? Country A will focus on making shoes. Therefore, country A, you will have 0 food, 冇食物. You will have 80 shoes. Country B, they focus on making food, so they will have 10 food, but no shoes. So what happens? The total, okay? 嗱，望下個 total 係幾多啦？嗱 previously, the total in previous case would be 25F plus 48S. Now, the new total here would be 10F plus 80S. Look at here. Actually, there would be fewer food, right? Therefore, when we talk about specialization, it may not be a complete specialization, a partial specialization. 即係只係做多啲咁解啫，唔係淨係做嗰樣嘢，得唔得？因為淨係做嗰樣嘢有機會會令佢跌咗㗎。喺呢個 case 我哋見到啊，見唔見啊？呢度啊，我哋係有機會跌咗㗎，得唔得？ So we are talking about specialization, but not necessarily complete specialization. Okay? 咁呢個係咪蝕咗啊 ？No, it has no loss at all. Because later on in elective 2, you will see that through trading, actually, they would push it back into a level higher than 25F and 45S. Okay? But let's leave it for elective 2. Okay? 好嘛？ So here we are done with the theory of chapter 23. Now, I suggest let's spend the remaining time look at some questions regarding the theory of international trade. Okay, now, first question first. Now, 1996. Okay, 我哋睇下呢條啦，1996年嘅題目啦。Now, again, remember, when you see this kind of questions, I suggest you change it into a format, the format that I know, 係咪啊？我哋話啦，要畫翻個 table 啦，我僭建佢算啦，呢度好嘛？我直接僭建佢啦。You see resources, right, with a unit of input, right? Resources 1. 好啦，呢個我哋似樣噶啦，好嘛？ So what would be the opportunity cost for country A? It would be 1G equals to 幾多啊？ 0.67S or 1S equals to 1.5 G. Okay, 好嘛？好啦 what about country B? Country B would be 1G equals to 0.8 S or 1S equals to 1.25 G. So what happens is that for country A, you will see that they will have an comparative advantage in making garments. And for country B, you will have an comparative advantage in making shoes. 好嘛？好啦，睇下啦。So which of the following is correct? The opportunity cost of producing shoes in country B is lower than that of country A. Yes, this is correct. 係咪？望下呢兩嚿啦，係咪1.25細過1.5啊嘛 ？Yes, one is correct. Number 2 here. Country B enjoys absolute advantage in the production of both goods. 好啦，我哋望一望啱唔啱啦，好嘛？ Now let's see. Country B with one resources, 50 garments, okay, more than 30 garments. 佢係做多啲嘅喎，so absolute advantage. Okay, 好嘛？ Now, what about next one? You see, with one resources, they also make 40 shoes, which is also more than that of country A. Therefore, this is also an absolute advantage. 40對20啦，係咪啊？都係佢做得快啲啦。Yes, number 2 is correct also. So, answer would be 1 and 2. Now, what about 3? If trading opportunities were open up, country B would export garment. Now, think about it. Country B would specialize in making garments. 喂，你係整嗰個人喎，咁你會入口邊個啊？ Would you both make garment and import garment? No. When you specialize in making garment, of course you would. 唔係 shoes，sorry 啊，睇錯咗添。When you specialize in making shoes, 你係整個人啊 ，you are the one making it. Of course, you would be selling it. You would be giving other people. You would be exporting shoes as well, right? Therefore, this is not correct. Only 1 and 2. 好嘛？肯定啦，係咪啊？你係整嗰個人啊嘛，梗係你負責去運出去啦，好冇 ？Okay, so next question. Here, next question. Now, suppose the output per man hour. Now, man hour basically resources, right? So here, resources 1, 1, and 1. 好啦，我哋計下啦。Now, what would be the opportunity cost for China? For China, 1 DVD would equals to 3 VCD, or just the opposite, right? Just the opposite would be 1 VCD equals to 0.3 DVD. What about Japan? Japan would be 哇，串到啲咩 ？Japan 哇，真係串到啲咩 ？Japan would be 1 DVD equals to 1 VCD 啊，最易計啦。Or 1 VCD equals to 1 DVD， 好易計啦，係咪？ Finally, for US, it would be 1 DVD equals to 5除3 1.6 1.6 VCD, or 1 VCD equals to 3唔係喎，計錯咗前面。喂，50除3 1.66係咪啊 ？Yes. Okay, 好嘛？嗱 ，very quickly, we have computed the opportunity costs. Okay, in terms of other goods. So let's see. Among these 3 countries, Japan has the lowest cost in making DVD. 見唔見啊？因為佢淨係放棄一隻 VCD 啫嘛。Now, for China, they would have an comparative advantage in making VCD. 見唔見佢整 VCD 係最平啦 ？Okay, what about US? US has nothing. 佢係中間嗰個啦。Okay, so let's see which one is correct. US comparative advantage. Comparative advantage. No, US has nothing. So let's see. Japan has comparative advantage in producing DVD only. Yes, this is correct. 啱啊，係咪啊？原來係日本啊，有 comparative advantage 啊，我哋計到啦。Okay, so this is how we do it. Okay, 嗱，做嚟做去三幅被嘅啫。Okay, it would be the same again and again, over and over again. Okay, 好嘛？ So next question. Now next question. If a country is more productive in producing every good than country Y, remember, when you see productive, what does it mean? 記住 productive 嘅意思 we are talking about absolute advantage. You only know about absolute advantage. Remember, absolute advantage and comparative advantage, they are not related. 兩個係完全冇任何關係㗎。Therefore, we know that we only know something about absolute advantage. Now, let's look at A, C, and D. A, the gain from trade would be greater than that of country Y. Now, this is not correct because we do not know the terms of trade. we need to know the terms of trade before we can know who gain more and who lose more. Oh no, actually both need to gain. 唔會 lose 㗎 ，lose 係唔會做生意㗎。OK， who would gain more? OK, we need to know the terms of trade. Now, C, country Y will import every good. OK, now remember, it is impossible. When you trade, you export something, you import something. It is impossible for you to import every good. Now, D may have a lower opportunity cost in producing every good than country Y. Now, we just talked about previously. It is impossible to have lower opportunity cost for all goods. 因為分子分母嘅問題啊，係咪？我哋頭先講過啦。Impossible. When you have lower opportunity cost in producing one good, it necessarily means you will have higher opportunity cost in producing another goods. So the answer is B here. Mutually beneficial trade between is still possible. Now, don't worry about this. We will talk about this one in the next video when we talk about type 1 question. Okay? You just need to know for now the answer is B. 到時再講點解啦，好冇？好嘛？ Now, next question. Okay, now actually skip this one first. 我哋skip 咗呢個先，好嘛？我哋 skip 咗呢個先。Now here 2006 per unit of input 係咪即係 resources 啦 ？So it will be resources 1 again. 好啦 ，now let's say what happens is that first calculate the opportunity cost， 我哋計咗 opportunity cost 先啊，好嘛？嗱，而家11啦，所以易計數啦，係咪 ？So it will be 1 DVD equals to 3 MP3 or 1 MP3 equals to 0.33 DVD。好啦 ，country B 啦 ，1 DVD equals to 1.5 MP3 or 1 MP3 equals to 幾多啊？0.66 yes 7 DVD. Okay, so you will see country A would have an comparative advantage in producing MP3, while country B would have an comparative advantage in producing DVD. 見唔見啊？ Now, if both countries have 3 units of input and complete specialization takes place. So according to the principle of comparative advantage, what would happen? 好啦，記住啊 the principle states that they would focus on making the goods that they have comparative advantage in. So what would happen to country A? They will specialize in making MP3. Okay? 嗱，記住啦。1 unit of one input can make 30 MP3, right? So what happens is that they will make 30 plus 3 MP3. 佢淨做 MP3 啊嘛，佢有3個 input 啊嘛，所以佢會做90個 MP3 啊。Okay? Now what about country B? Since they have a comparative advantage in making this, right? In making DVD. Therefore, they specialize. They will make 8 times 3 個 DVD。OK， 好嘛？所以啦，答案啦，90個 MP3， 24隻 DVD 啦。OK， so this is how we do the calculation。OK， 得唔得？ Now next one。Let's see, right? 睇先啊 Yes, output per unit of resources, meaning we are having our resources again. Resources 1 and 1. Okay, so very quickly, let's calculate the costs. Okay, 好嘛？嗱 first of all, country A. Country A, it would be 1x equals to 2y, or 1y equals to 0.5x. Now for country B, that would be 1x equals to 0.33y, or 1y equals to 2x. Immediately, you see, country A would have an comparative advantage in making y, and country B would have an comparative advantage in making x. Like in Gina. Okay, so let's see which one is correct. Country A has a comparative advantage in making y.咁 A、B、C 啦 ，D 一定錯啦，係咪啊 ？D 已經錯咗啦。So, but let's see which one is a correct explanation. Now, first, with the same amount of resources, they can produce more. A 呢個啱唔啱啊 ？No, it's not correct because A, this is same amount produce more. This is absolute advantage. 佢係解釋緊 absolute advantage 喎。It is not explaining comparative advantage. This is explaining absolute advantage. Okay, so A is not correct. Now, what about C? Country A's opportunity cost of producing 1 unit of Y is lower than that of country B. 係啦，比起 country B 嚟講低啲。So C is the answer. Now, what about B? It says has a lower opportunity cost of producing 1 unit of Y than producing 1 unit of X. Now remember, when we talk about comparative advantage, we are comparing with other country. But here, answer B is comparing with other goods. No, 我哋唔係同另一隻 goods 比，我哋係同另一個國家比。Okay, so B is also wrong in this sense. Okay, 得唔得？ So answer C here. 嗱，見唔見啊？嗱 so far we have done some questions already. You see, every questions follows the same rule to do it. 同一個規矩做嘅啫，好嗎？ Okay, let's continue here. 2010. It shows the amount of toys and garment produced per unit. 係啊，per unit of input. Then let's do it here. Resources would be 1 and 1. 係啦，一樣啦。So let's calculate. For country A, it would be 1G equals to 4T, or 1T equals to 0.25 G. For country B, it would be 1G equals to 2T, or 1T equals to 0.5 G. 得唔得？嗱，係咁樣啦。So we see country A has a comparative advantage in making toy, and country B has a comparative advantage in making garment. 好嘛？好啦，咁睇下咩發生咩事啦。Now, which of the following is correct? Now you see, country A gives up a smaller amount of garment than country B in producing 1 unit of toy. 睇下係咪咯？係嘛？ Toy, country A gives up less than country B. 啱喎，係咪？一 T 係細啲啊嘛。So answer A. Now what about B, C, and D? The opportunity cost of producing garments in country A 係嘛 is lower. No, actually, it's 4 toy 係咪？佢放棄多啲 toy 喎，係咪？4 versus 2. So B is not correct. C. Country A uses a larger amount of resources than country B in producing 1 unit of garment. Now let's see. 佢話啦，原來要用多啲 resources 嚟整喎。Now let's see. With 1 resources, okay, with 1 resources, country A can make 10 garments. So let's say, if they want to make 5 garments, how much resources? It will be 0.5. 見唔見啊？ To make the same amount of garment, country A actually use less resources, not larger amounts. 佢唔係用多啲啊，應該用少啲先啱啊。OK， 應該用少啲先啱啊。So C is not correct. Now finally D, the total output of toy in country A is higher than that of country B. 嗱，啱唔啱啊？望下呢個。Is that correct? Now, some of you may be thinking, yes, toy 40, more than 10. But remember, this is produced per unit of input. The question is, how much input do we have? 你知唔知佢有幾多 input 啊 ？OK， 你知唔知佢有幾多 input 啊 ？No, you don't know how much input the countries have respectively. 你唔知 country A 有幾多 input， 你唔知 country B 有幾多 input。What about if country B they have 100 unit of resources, country A only 1 unit of resources, right? So you will see the problem. 我哋唔知道有幾多 input 啦 ，therefore we cannot conclude anything about the total output。好冇？我哋唔知道有幾多 input 啦，所以唔能夠講幾多 output 啦，好嘛？ All right, now next one. Now let's skip this one. Let's skip this one and leave it for last. Okay? 喂，仲有幾多啊？哇，仲有咁多嘅係。Okay. Now here, 2011. Now the following table shows the amount of when they use all their resources. So this time, let's type all. All. Okay, 好嘛？嗱 ，all resources 啦。嗱 ，so here, let's look at how we do it. Let's look at how we do it. Now for country A, 嗱，見唔見啊？中間對數噶嘛，而家大家都係 all 嘛。Therefore, we know it will be 1 foot equals to 6 point. This one, right? Or 1, no, C, right? It's called C. Or 1C equals to 1.5 foot. This is for country A. For country B, it will be 1 foot equals to 0.5 C, or 1C equals to 2F. So you see, right? Country A has a comparative advantage in making clothing, while country B has a comparative advantage in making food. Like見唔見啊? Okay, so country A, comparative advantage in producing food. No, wrong. Okay, what about D? Country B will export clothing. 啱唔啱啊? No, they will focus on making food and export food. Okay, A 同 D 唔啱啦. Okay, now for the answer is actually B, but you have not yet learned B. So I will talk about this question again in the next video when we talk about type 1 question. Okay, but we know the answer is B. Now let's look at C. Now C is very important. 嗱，呢個好重要㗎. It says country B has an absolute advantage in producing food by just looking at the number. 見唔見啊？40, 30, right? Seems to be country B is making more, but the problem is here. Resources this time, I'm not saying 1 and 1. 呢個唔係一個 resources 可以做到30同40啊。This time we are talking about all the resources of country A and all the resources of country B. My question is, do you know all? How much is all? 即係幾多係 all 啊？ No, you don't know, right? It can be country A only have 1 unit of resource. Country B, 100 unit of resources. So you see, right? This will be a big difference, right? 係嘛？如果係 if this is the case, 1 and 100, then actually country A would have an absolute advantage. But the problem right now is because it is all and all. 因為而家係 all 啊，所以我真係唔知佢係幾多。We do not know how much resources they have. Okay, that's why C is not correct. Okay, the answer is B, but we'll talk about that in next video. Okay. 哇，好長啊！呢條片都 let me speed up a little bit. Only a few more questions to go, and then we can call it an end for this video. Okay. Now for practice paper, 嗱你都知啦 assume both country A and country B produce and consume. If country A produce a unit with less resources, 用少啲資源整一隻 goods. What does that mean? Remember, when you talk about less resources to produce same amount, there is only one meaning: absolute advantage. You only know country A can produce has an absolute advantage in producing X. Only A is correct. Only one is correct. 2, 3, and 4, you do not know. Okay, all of them you do not know. 你完全冇任何資訊㗎。Okay, you only know absolute advantage in producing X. Okay, 得唔得？冇其他㗎啦，得唔得？ So this one. Now, 2 more, and then we go back to look at a little bit more tricky type of question. Okay, 好啦， now 2012. Now consider the trade between 2 countries. Actually, this one we cannot do it. Let's do it next time in our next video. 我未講啦，唔知點解擺咗喺度啊。Okay, sorry 啊。Okay, now here 2015. A country has an absolute advantage in producing X. This is the only information you know. Okay, 好嘛？ So which of the following statement about the country is correct? 嗱 ，sorry 啊，呢度漏咗一隻字啊。Okay, this will be another good. Okay, 好啦，係咪咧 ？Another good. Yes. Answer A. The country can produce a greater amount of good X than good Y. 嗱 ，another good 即係 good Y 啦。OK， 不如改咗佢啊，好嘛 ？Than good Y. With the same amount of resource. Remember, when we talk about absolute advantage, we are comparing countries. We are not comparing goods. 我哋係對比緊國家同國家之間做嗰一隻 goods， 唔係對比緊同一個國家做兩隻 goods。Okay? We are not comparing goods. We are comparing country. Okay? So, unfortunately, A is not correct. 好似嘅，好似啊 but it is another good. If it is another country, then it would be correct. 好嘛？好啦，嗱 B, country has a comparative advantage. 嗱，記住啊 absolute advantage and comparative advantage, they are not related. You know absolute, you do not know anything about comparative. And remember, it is possible to have absolute advantage in both goods. Only in comparative advantage that one comparative advantage, another would be comparative disadvantage. 得唔得？但係 absolute 可以兩個都係㗎。So B and C are not correct. D, the country may import good X from international market. Why? As long as they have comparative disadvantage in making good X. 啱㗎呢個 ，OK? Answer is D, right here. It may import 有可能嘅喎，只要佢係 comparative disadvantage， 咁佢就會 import 㗎啦，好冇 ？It is correct， 好嘛 ？All right, so let's go back to do 2 more questions and call it an end for this video. Now, how come I skip 2 of the questions, right? Now, the reason I skip 2 of the questions because we are moving. Now, so far, we only look at 1 resources or all resources, how many goods they can make, right? This time is different. It's saying 1 unit of goods requiring how much resources. 今次呢個係叫 type 2 question. 嗱，好抽象啊。Now let's draw a table. Then you know what I am talking about immediately. 你一睇 table 就知㗎啦。Now that's why you draw a table, because now when it comes to type 2 question, it will be very useful. Remember, it is saying 1 unit of toy would require 1 man hour, and 1 unit of watch would require 3 man hour. 嗱，見唔見同頭先嗰啲好唔同啊？ Just now, all the table, this will be the same. This time, this will be different. 完全唔同㗎啦。好啦，我哋抄埋佢先啦，係嘛？ 1 unit of toy, 2, 4，見唔見啊？1、2、3、4，1、3、2、4，唔係1、2、3、4。Okay. Now, this is how we use the table. Just now, because all the columns, they are the same, 1, 1, and 1. Therefore, we didn't need to do anything special. But this time, remember, the objective of this table is that each country, their resources have to be equalized before you can do anything. 喺你做任何嘢之前，每一個 country 嘅 resources 要對等咗先。嗱，唔係 country 同 country 中間，係每個 country 自己嘅 resources。You need to equalize the resources before you can do any calculation， 得唔得？咁點做啊？好容易啫嘛。One resources can do one toy, 3 resources to do one watch. So how do we equalize that? Very easy, times 3. Times 3. 咁呢度乘3，嗰度都要乘3啦，好嘛？ Now finally, this is equalized. And for country B, how do we equalize? Very easy, times 2. Times 2. 只要 country 自己嘅 resources 對等 as long as the resources within the country has been equalized, now we are ready to do some calculation. 只要對等啦，就攞翻我哋平時嘅方法啦，睇翻幾多個 T 等於幾多個 watch 啦。Okay, so for country A, it would be this time 1 watch equals to 3 T, or the reciprocal 1 T equals to that would be 0.33 watch. For country B, it would be 1 watch equals to 2 T, or 1 T equals to 0.5 watch. So you will see country A has a comparative advantage in making toy, and country B has comparative advantage in making watch. 好嘛？所以邊個先啱啊？睇下先。Country B in watch 係啦，呢個啱啦。This one is correct. 4. What about absolute advantage? 嗱 ，absolute advantage 就好易睇啦。Okay, absolute advantage. You just look at 邊個用少啲 resources 嚟做咯 ？Same one toy. Okay, you see, country A is using less time. 用少啲時間啊，係咪啊？ Therefore, country A absolute advantage. Again, one watch. You see, country A is using lower time. 係咪少啲 man hour 啦 ？So actually, country A has absolute advantage in producing both goods. 見唔見啊？一個 toy 用少啲 resources， 一個 watch 用少啲 resources，less resources than country B in making both one watch and one toy. Therefore, both absolute advantage. Okay, 嚟多次啦。Remember, when we draw this kind of table, the objective is to equalize the resources of each country within the country before we can do any calculation. 好嘛？ So let's try one last questions, and then we call it the end for this video. And that will be 2010 2010年嘅47條啦。Let's do it again. Again, this is producing one watch and the man hour required. Now, remember, we need to translate this kind of table into the table that we know. 我哋用翻我哋睇得明嘅 format 啦 ，OK？ That would be country X, that would be country Y， 好嘛？嗱 ，this is our watch, this is orange, and this is our resources。嗱，小心啲抄啊 ！Now it says one watch, OK? One watch would be 2 hours. One orange, 2 hours. And for country Y, one watch would be 4 hours and one orange would be 8 hours. Remember our objective, 記住啦，我哋嘅 objective 係要將 country 自己要 equalize 啊嘛，係咪 ？We need to equalize the resources within each country. Lucky for you, country X already equalized. What about country Y? Equalizing them, that would be 2, and that would be 2. Okay, so what would be the opportunity cost for country X? 1 watch, 1 orange, 1 orange, 1 watch. For country Y, it would be 1 watch, 0.5 orange, and or 1 orange equals to 2 watch. 係嘛？因為你一定要 resources 相等咗先可以計數㗎。If you have not equalized the resources, there is no common ground for you to do the calculation. OK， 好嘛 ？So let's see. Based on the above information， 好啦，我哋 highlight 咗啲呢度先啦。Let's see which country has a comparative advantage in producing watch. 邊個整 watch 平啲啊 ？You will see. In making watch, that would be country Y， 係咪？佢整 Y 平啲喎，0.5隻 orange 啫。嗱 ，what about absolute advantage？ 好啦 ，watch 邊個整 watch 快啲啊 ？You see, country X actually make it faster. 2 versus 4. Therefore, country X would have an absolute advantage in making watch. Actually, country X would also have absolute advantage in making orange. Both orange and watch 兩個都整得快過人啊，用少啲 resources 啊。Okay, so this would be part 1 of our video, in which this time we talk about the principle of comparative advantage. Make sure you understand this video before you proceed to the next video when we talk about type 1 and type 2 question. Okay, so until then, I will see you again in the next video. See you.